Just go ahead and come to lie down with your knees bent and your feet to the floor. Take a deep breath. As best we can, we're going to focus on this time that we've carved out for ourselves. Inevitably, if you're in your home or your workplace, it's not the same as being in a group class at a studio. So there will be distractions, whether they're just in your mind or things happening in the rooms around you. It's okay to attend to those things and then just come back to your practice. We'll start by breathing into the back of the rib cage. So we can put one hand on our chest, what we think of as our heart center. We call that the heart center in yoga practice. If you are familiar with anatomy, you know that actually your heart is off to the left a little bit, and that's why the left side of your rib cage is a little bit bigger because it has to accommodate more stuff. But we'll just put our hand in the center for now. And if you drew an imaginary line from the palm of your hand straight down to the floor beneath you, and you hit your back body, that's where I want you to start sending your breath. Think about breathing into that space in your back body directly behind or underneath this heart center area. See if maybe when you hit the top of your inhale, it doesn't have to be forced or extra deep. If you can feel that part of your body gently expanding down into the floor. When we breathe and move through our practice, one of our goals that we have every single time, every day, is to try to maintain equal or even distribution of pressure, abdominal pressure. And your abdominal cavity extends from your upper ribs all the way down to the top of your pelvis. So we naturally get expansion into the upper chest, but we're trying to get expansion into the back part of the body as well. And now you can move your hand down just beneath your breastbone to your lowest ribs, upper belly area. And same thing here. You might feel your belly expanding into your hand, but can we send our breath into the opposite side? If you drew that line from the palm of your hand straight down to where your low ribs and the space between the bottom of your rib cage or your shoulder blades meet the floor, see if we can expand that with the inhale. A little bit more challenging the further down we go. And then move your hand down a little further until it's right over your belly button. Same thing. So now we're breathing into the back of the waist, just beneath those lowest ribs in the back of your rib cage. And moving your hand down one last time. Now it's probably going to be sitting beneath your beneath your belly button, but above your pubic bone. So you may feel your hand sitting between those two bony points in the front of your pelvis. If you're a female, it's sitting over your female organs and slightly above your bladder. And again, here, think about sending your breath into the back of your pelvis. So expansion from beneath the back of the ribs all the way down into the back of the pelvis towards the tailbone. It's a more bony area, so you may not get as much physical movement with your inhales there, but you might notice a subtle change, sensation from the inside out. And go ahead and remove your hand from your torso. You can place your hands wherever it's comfortable for you. And we're going to bring more muscular engagement into creating an ideal situation to even out that pressure. Because we have more bony landmarks in the back of our body, it appears or feels to be more sturdy. Because in most of us, the muscles in the front of the torso are not as active or cooperative as we would like for them to be. And so we have a tendency to spill forward through the front while the back holds all the pressure. So we're going to try to even that out and close the gap a little bit in the front by moving those lowest ribs in the front and those bony landmarks in the front of the hips closer together. Just hugging them closer together. And you might feel that space between the back of your ribs and the back of your hips come into better contact with the floor. And now we're going to use the muscles of the lower belly, and we're going to anchor down. So I want you to hug down towards the floor with your lower belly. And hopefully that's going to prevent your belly from popping up towards the ceiling, from spilling out. And we're going to keep that as we lift both feet off the floor, kneecaps pointing straight up to start. Keep that sense of anchoring down, hugging hip bones and ribs closer together. And I want you to slowly tap your right foot down to the floor, super light. And I want you to hug it all the way past center and try to hug your right thigh towards your right ribs. It's probably not going to touch. We're just hugging in that direction. Notice if your back muscles on one or both sides try to compensate. If so, adjust. Hip bones and ribs close together. Keep hugging down towards the floor and hugging that right thigh in towards the right side of your ribs. A couple more seconds here. Maintaining that even pressure, we're going to tap the right foot down. And again, slowly come through center. Hug the thigh in. Hug it, hug it, hug it. A few more seconds here. And one more time. Tap that right foot down to the floor. Maintain that sense of hugging down through the lower belly. And then come back through center, hug the thigh towards the right ribs. Hip bones and ribs together. Keep hugging. And bring the right knee down to meet the left. And you can bring both feet to the floor. We're going to try that same sequence. We're going to pick up the pace a little bit, but which will make it easier in one sense. But we're going to keep the challenge level high by extending the left leg out. It doesn't have to straighten all the way. In fact, a little bend in the left knee is fine, because I want you to be able to maintain that contact between your back body, lowest ribs and back of the waist with the floor, and maintain that sense of hugging hip bones and ribs together. And if we straighten that left leg all the way, it makes it harder to do that. So straighten it as much as okay for you. And then we're going to lift the right foot again. The right knee is bent. You're going to tap that right foot down and then hug the right thigh towards the ribs. Hug it, hug it, hug it. And again, like that. Notice if the left side of your waist or lower back is peeling away from the floor. Hug that thigh in towards the ribs. And one more time like that. Hug it in towards the ribs. Hold here. Place that right foot down, rebend the left knee, roll to your left side. You can use your left arm or yoga block as a pillow, just a little support for your head. And slip your right fingers underneath the left side of your waist There should be a little space there. If there's not, lift the left side of your waist up away from the floor so that you can get the tips of your fingers underneath. Just engaging that side body just a little bit. And then from here, you're going to lift your right knee away from the left, and you're going to straighten your right leg as much as you can. And now you're going to hug your right thigh towards your right ribs. You're going to feel those outer hip muscles, those abductors, all the way into the outer glutes. And we're going to hold here. Keep reaching up through the right foot. Hold it. Keep lifting the left side of your waist. And then you can rebend that right knee. Place the right knee down to meet the left. And we're going to take that same sequence on the second side. So come back to your back. We'll start with both knees bent, feet to the floor. We'll be working with hugging the left thigh towards the left side of the ribs. Find your hip bones and ribs together action, the action of hugging down to the floor with your lower belly. You can keep your right knee bent. We're going to lift the left foot, lift the right foot, and then hug the left thigh towards the left ribs. Hug it, hug it, hug it. Hold it there. Keep hugging hip bones and ribs together. We're getting those internal obliques here, those lowest abdominals as well. And now we're going to take the left foot down to the floor. Come back through center and hug the thigh towards the ribs. Hug, hug, hug. As we move through the transitions, the right thigh may want to move with the left. We're trying to keep that right thigh still, stable in the pelvis and side body. Let's do it again. We'll tap the left foot slowly down to the floor. And then hug it up towards the left ribs. Hold it there. Hug it in close. You may find that one thigh gets a little bit closer to the rib cage than the other. Let's do it one more time. Tap the foot down. Hug the thigh in. Hold just for a couple of seconds here. And then we'll tap the left foot down, leave it down. Place the right foot down. We'll take the same sequence with that extended right leg. So you can straighten the right leg any amount, back of the heel, hugging down into the floor. But we're going to maintain that back body contact with the floor, that sense of hugging down, hip bones and ribs together. And then we're going to pick the left foot up off the floor, hug the left thigh towards the left ribs, hug it, hug it, hug it. And with control, tap the left foot down. And we'll do that 2 more times. Hug that thigh in. And tap the left foot down. And last time. And both feet can come to the floor with knees bent. Transition onto your right side. Put a little lift in the right side of your waist. And then we're going to take the left knee away from the right. And as best we can, start to straighten the left leg. You're really going to feel those outer hip and outer glute muscles. You might also be feeling your left hip flexor. TFL. Woo. Keep reaching up to that left foot. And then start to hug that left thigh towards the left ribs any amount. Couple more rounds of breath here. And then we're going to rebend the left knee, place the left shin down on top of the right. And we'll just use the strength of the left hand to press up away from the floor. We're going to be making our way to a tabletop position. Using the pads of your fingers, squeeze the floor, making the muscles of your hands strong. You might notice that the knuckles of each finger bend a little bit and that space lifts away from the mat. You might even have a little lift in the center of your palms. We're going to keep that strength, shift the weight forward, keeping weight not only in the wrists, but also the pads of the fingers, thumbs, and pinky fingers. And then shift your weight back again. Let's try that again as best you can. Elbows stay straight, shift forward. Working on our wrist flexion and extension here. And one more time, shift forward. Strong hands. And then coming back to neutral, we're just gonna flip the palms so the backs of the hands and wrists press down towards the floor. Your shoulders can be slightly behind your wrists. And this might be enough right here. This can be quite intense. We're trying to get the tips of the fingers or fingernails down to the floor, not only the thumbs, but the pinkies as well. Woo. Feel on the backs of those forearms, hands and wrists. A couple more breaths here. And coming out of that, we're going to flip the palms back down towards the floor with the fingertips out to the sides of the room. This might be enough here, or you can turn them toward your knees any amount. And we're going to find that sense of squeezing the floor again to ignite the muscles of the hands and forearms. And we're going to shift our weight back this time, trying to keep the wrists and thumbs down. And then shift forward, and we'll do that 2 more times. Shifting back. Soften the tops of the shoulders here. And forward. And one more like that. Go ahead and let your hands peel away from the floor. Find your tabletop position with neutral hands. Engage your hands with the floor. Take your right hand to the back of your head. And I want you to let the left side of your chest sink down towards the floor. And your left outer shoulder and the head of your shoulder is going to glide up towards your left ear. So we're letting the shoulder slide up, letting the shoulder blade glide, and let the chest sink down while the arms stay strong. And then we're going to find the opposite. You're going to push your left hand strongly into the floor. Push, 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 push. And we're going to open up the chest, leaning the head into the right hand. And then come back to center. We're going to do that 2 more times. Let your chest dip down inside your left shoulder. Shoulder glides up towards the ear. And then we're going to push to the hand. Push, push, push the floor away. And open up, leaning your head into your right hand. We'll move through it 1 more time. As you move through this round, I want you to think about what's happening with your back body as well. Think hip bones and ribs close together. Push to that hand, open up, while maintaining that even pressure in the abdominal cavity. And we'll take the right arm and release it from the head, thread it underneath the left. You can walk your left fingertips forward any amount and press down through the back of your right hand and arm. Same thing here. We're in a twist, twisting in the opposite direction. We want to maintain even pressure and control, 360. Think about that corset. The corset's purpose is not to suck in and constrict your breath. It's to maintain even pressure. And pressing down through the left hand, we'll unwind back to center. We're going to take that same action on the second side. So your right hand will be the supporting hand. Left hand will come to the back of your head. We'll start by letting the chest dip down inside the right shoulder towards the floor as the right shoulder glides up towards the ear. Try to keep your right elbow straight. And then we'll find the opposite action. Push through the right hand, push the floor away, push, 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 push until you can't push anymore. And then we'll open up, twisting to the left, head presses into the left hand. Rotating back to center, we'll do it 2 more times. Let the chest dip slowly and smoothly down inside that right shoulder. Keep the elbow straight. And then push, push, push through your hand until you can't push anymore, and then open up, twisting to the left. When we twist, are we twisting from the rib cage or are you using your lower back? 1 more round, come to neutral. Chest dips down inside the right shoulder. Push the right hand into the floor so strongly, and then turn and open up. And then we'll come back to center and thread that left arm underneath the right. You can walk your right hand away from your face a bit, pausing for a few breaths here. Pressing down to your right hand. We'll come back to center. And we're going to find downward facing dog. Legs don't have to straighten all the way, but I do want your elbows straight, just like with the tabletop exercise we just did. Try to keep your elbows straight and let your shoulder blades and the tops of your shoulders slide toward your hands. Soften them to the tops of your shoulders. Press strongly to the pads of your fingers and to the base of your pinky fingers. You might even feel that the pads of your fingers are heavier than your wrists, and that's okay. To prepare for our next transition, I want you to maintain all that you've just cultivated and really start to rotate your biceps, your upper arm muscles, towards the ceiling. So you might feel more engagement across your shoulder blade area, across your upper back. And we're going to keep hugging the biceps towards the ceiling while we push through the pinky fingers. And we're going to slowly start to shift forward to a plank pose without bending the elbows. Once you find your plank, we're going to take that same transition in reverse. Biceps forward, push to the pinky fingers, let the shoulder blades glide towards your ears, eventually gliding toward your hands when you come to downward facing dog. So let's try that 2 more times. Letting the shoulder blades hug down your back and your biceps rotate forward as you shift into plank. And then as we go back to down dog, biceps are still forward, but shoulder blades start to move toward your ears and eventually toward your hands. Try it 1 more time. Slow, controlled transition. And back to down dog. And once you come to down dog, go ahead and lower your knees down. You can flatten the tops of your feet to the floor. And we're going to find that sense of hugging thighs to the ribs, just like we did at the beginning of the practice. You're going to let your ribs come down toward your thighs. You're going to hug your thighs toward your ribs and find this compact little shape. Forehead might come to the floor. The rabbit pose. When we're maintaining this action of hugging thighs to ribs, it's actually not that restful. Use your hands against the floor to come to a seated position. So anytime you need to rest, if you like rabbit pose, you can go there. For me, it's a pretty active pose, especially when we approach it with that mindset. Or you can just come to sit and then join back in at any time. We're gonna come back to down dog and we're gonna add on with that transition from down dog to plank. And we're gonna add in a chaturanga. So let's come to down dog. Strong hands pressing to the pinkies, using the pads of the fingers. Rotate your biceps towards the ceiling. Soften the tops of your shoulders. Keep that orientation of your biceps and strengthen your hands. As with straight elbows, you shift forward to your plank pose. Now I want you to think shoulder blades towards your hips. Keep pushing your hands into the floor, but let your elbows bend just 2 or 3 inches. And then push, push, push the floor to re-straighten your arms. Try that 2 more times. Push the floor to re-straighten. This last time, we're gonna lower all the way down. Once you come down, flatten the tops of your feet. Let your hands slide forward a bit, forward of your shoulders. Think hip bones and ribs closer together. Get a little squeeze into those glute muscles and push the floor away with your hands. Coming into a cobra pose. We'll be meeting back in downward facing dog. From your down dog, walk your feet toward your hands. Take your feet hip distance apart. Put a little bend in your knees. Push your heels into the floor, keeping that bend in your knees. And then we're going to bring the upper body a little bit more upright. Being mindful of not overly arching into the spine. So think about that pressure in your abdomen. We're going to close the gap just a little bit between the hip bones and ribs. And I want you to push your heels strongly into the floor. Squeeze your butt towards the backs of your knees as you stand up. We're going to keep that sense of butt back to the knees for the transition and sit back into the squat. So glutes are working strongly here. We're going to hug the back of the hips, hug the glutes towards the backs of the knees as we stand up. And then we'll come back into the squat. Let's do that one more time. And then back into the squat. This time we're going to do it with one leg. You're going to shift your weight onto your right foot. You're going to hug your right glutes towards the back of your right knee. And you're going to push through your right foot to stand all the way up on that foot. Left knee is lifted, or left thigh is lifted with your knee bent. And we're going to do exactly what we did at the beginning of our practice. You're going to keep hugging hip bones and ribs together and hug your left thigh toward your left ribs. Hug it as close as you can. Hug it, hug it, hug it. Hold. Keep pushing through your right foot. Maybe extend both arms up. Reach up. And then you can bring your hands back down to your hips or to your heart center. And we're going to externally rotate the left knee just by taking it out to the side. And then we're going to take the left foot higher than the right knee. So as you rotate, I want you to rotate from your thigh bone, not from the foot. You're going to rotate your thigh in so that the knee tips down and the foot lifts up. And then we're going to reverse that. You're going to externally rotate the thigh. So now the knee is higher than the foot. And then again, internally rotate, moving from the thigh bone. And externally rotate. It's really tempting to move from the foot. Try to move where your thigh hits your hip. And then again, internally rotate. Put a little bend in your right knee. Step your left foot all the way back to the back of your mat. Bend your right knee to a square. We're coming into side angle pose. Push that right heel into the floor. We're still internally rotating that left thigh, even though the leg is straight. And then you can rest your right forearm to your thigh, or maybe take that right arm inside the front leg. We're really letting that right hip crease sink down, but the left hip crease is up and back, the hip flexor is soft. So once you find your leg positioning, check in with your torso. Is the front of your torso spilling open and the back constricted? If so, even out. One of the best images that I've heard about this abdominal pressure is a tin can. So when you have an empty tin can, like a beer can or whatever, it's smooth, 360 all the way around. But if you squeeze the can, one side gets pinched in and the other side juts out. So if we're over squeezing the muscles of our back, they're pinched in where the muscles of the belly spill forward. Couple more rounds of breath here. Maybe left arm extends overhead. Let the shoulder blade glide toward your ears. We're going to keep all of that and just bring the left hand down to the floor. Square it up so that your left heel lifts. And we're going to plant the left hand to the mat or to the floor. You're going to push the floor away with that left hand. Take your right hand to the back of your head. And then we're going to open up to the right. Still pushing the right heel down. Head pressing into right hand. And coming back down to center, take your right hand down, take your left knee down, and then swing your right knee back to meet the left, and come to lounge on your right side. So we're going to be working towards side planks today. And they can be done, we're going to do different variations. They can be done on forearm or on hand. So whatever is better for your body today. If you're on your forearm, which we're doing now, your forearm should be parallel to the short edge of your mat. And just like we push our hand into the floor, we want to push our entire forearm into the floor. But we want to initiate that push, not from the front of the shoulder, but from the back of the shoulder. So where the space between your armpit and your shoulder blade. And you can push from there, pushing down. And then let's go ahead and straighten the top and bottom leg. So we're lounging kind of a, did Jane Fonda do this? I feel very 80s right now. Like I should be in a leotard and do some, actually let's do that. Oh my gosh, lift your top leg. Holy outer hip and glutes. Don't let it rotate, just lift it. Okay, those ladies were fierce. Now I know. Okay, bring it back down. That's not actually what we're doing today, but that's fun to try. So we're gonna push through the feet, push through the forearm, and see if we can lift the right hip away from the floor. Push, push, push. Push, push, push. And now I want you to push so much that you actually lift that hip a little higher. Push, push, push. Lift your hips to the ceiling. Push, push. All the while, we're still hugging hip bones and ribs closer together. And with control, we're going to lower down. Still pushing through that outer armpit area. And then you're going to bend both knees. Coming to sit upright. Right shin in front. Left shin pointing back behind you. And from here, we're gonna see if we can lift the left knee while keeping the left foot to the floor. You may wanna have your right hand out to the side for support. Hugging hip bones and ribs closer together. See if you can pick that left knee up off the floor. So we're just opening and closing. And then lower it back down. Let's try 2 more times. Pick up the knee. We're going into external rotation with that left thigh. And then lower it down, internal rotation. 1 more time. And then we're gonna be meeting back in tabletop. And downward facing dog. So in your down dog, find the strength in your hands, straight elbows. Shoulder blades gliding toward your ears, toward your hands. Biceps rotating toward the ceiling. Keep that rotation and your elbows straight. Shift forward to plank. Now the shoulder blades are hugging towards the backs of your hips. Maintain that, keep pushing the floor away as you bend your elbows, just 2 or 3 inches. And push the floor away to re-straighten those arms. And then we'll lower all the way down with control. And come into our cobra pose. And downward facing dog pose. From down dog, walk your feet toward your hands. Find your squat, heavy to the heels. We'll take 3 reps with both feet on the floor. We're hugging the glutes towards the backs of the knees. Push to those heels and straighten the legs to stand up. Come back into the squat with control. Hips towards knees, push through the feet. And come back down. 1 more like that. Push through the feet. Find your squat. Put more weight in your left foot. Same action applies. Glutes are really working here, hugging the back of the glutes towards the backs of the knees. We're gonna push through the left foot, coming to stand on the left foot. Right thigh is lifted, and we're gonna hug that right thigh towards the right ribs. Get as close as you can. Hold it there. Maybe extend arms up. But as you do that, what happens with the front of your tin can? Hands can come back down, and we're just gonna rotate the thigh bone out like a window, like a casement window, opening up, moving from the hip, not from the knee. Try that 1 more time, come to neutral. Just externally rotate. And now we're gonna turn the thigh bone on a dowel. You're gonna rotate from where the thigh meets the hip, and you're gonna turn it in so that the right foot lifts higher than the knee. And then we're gonna externally rotate, lifting that right foot as much as we can. 1 more time like that. Balance is challenging here. Internally rotate. And externally rotate. Internally rotate and hold it. And we're gonna step the right foot back. We're setting up for our side angle pose. Bending into that left knee. Hip crease is heavy. Left heel is heavy. Still internally rotating the right thigh and softening the hip flexor back. Forearm to left thigh or forearm inside left leg. Adjust your feet as needed. And once you get your positioning with your lower body, check in with that canister. What's happening with your tin can? Maybe right arm reaches overhead, letting the shoulder blade lift, reaching from that outer armpit all the way to the pinky finger. Couple more breaths here. And then we'll bring the right hand down to the floor. We're gonna square it up to plant the right hand. Your right heel will be lifted. Left heel is still heavy to the floor. Bring your left hand to the back of your hip. Push the floor away with your right hand, and then find your twist. Coming back to center, you can bring both knees down. And then we're gonna make our way to that lounging position on the left side. You can start on your forearm. Once you find your forearm positioning on your left side, go ahead and straighten both legs. If you look at your body, it should look like there's a very subtle hinge in the front of your hips instead of all in a straight line. If we go to a full 180 degrees, which is a straight line, then we over-engage the muscles in the lower back. And the hip flexors pop forward. So think about your canister, subtle hinge in the front of the hips. And then let's try to lift that right leg. We did on the first side. Woo! Maybe this side is more challenging than the first. Or maybe the first side was more challenging. Maybe you don't remember, you tried to put it out of your memory already. And then go ahead and lower. And now we're gonna press through the left forearm and feet to try to lift the left hip away from the mat. Lift, lift, lift. Keep hugging hip bones and ribs together. Keep pushing from that outer left armpit. Couple more breaths here. And then with control, we'll lower back down. You can use your left hand to press upright, your left shin in front, right shin pointing back. So we're in that 90-90 position, that staggered seated position. Left hand can come to the floor for support. We're gonna see if we can lift the right knee away from the floor. So we're externally rotating the right thigh bone. And then lowering it back down. Try 2 more times. Now we had a nice chat before we started our practice. And I don't know how long we were chatting, but I'm looking at the clock. And we are slowly, actually not slowly, we are rapidly approaching our hour time limit.
13 minutes pre.
Woo-wee. All right, we'll see what we can get done. Okay. So we're gonna make our way to a restful position just for a few moments. That might just be sitting crisscross. So I mentioned earlier that we're gonna be working toward side plank variations. These can be done on the forearm, like we just practiced a moment ago, or they can be done on the hand. I'll be walking you through it. We're gonna take that lunge sequence that we did a moment ago with the side angle, and we're gonna add on a little bit. So we'll see what we can accomplish in 13 minutes without rushing. Come to down dog. From your down dog, put a little bend in your right knee, and without adjusting your canister or without messing up your tin can, extend your right foot straight back. So no crushing of the can. Keep pressing through your pinky fingers. Maybe push that left heel more firmly into the floor. Couple of breaths here. And then we're gonna hug that right thigh towards the right ribs. This time you're gonna let yourself shift forward and make your way to a lunge. Bringing that right foot down, you're gonna spin your left heel down. We're coming into our side angle one more time. Now the tin can crushing can go front to back. It can also go side to side. So are we crushing the tin can on the right side? Left arm overhead. gonna keep that length. Bring the left hand down, square it up. We're setting up for that twisted lunge, right hand to the back of the head. As you twist, keep pushing through your right heel. Push the left hand into the floor. And come back to center. We're going to be pushing through the right heel to stand up onto the right foot for a half moon. So left hand can come to hip or just be out in the air. We're going to push to stand up onto the right foot. And we're going to lift that left leg, get slightly internally rotated. As we start to open up into half moon, you might notice that your right leg feels externally rotated. Reach out through both feet. Maybe extend the left hand up. Really lifting from that outer left hip. Pushing the right foot into the floor. And then what's happening with the canister? So many things to focus on here. And we'll put a little bend in the right knee, heavy to the heel. We're going to step the left foot back, reverse our warrior. And then windmill hands down to the floor. Stepping back to a plank. And then we're going to come into a side plank on the right. So you have options. You can come to your right hand, or you can be on your right forearm, and I'll walk you through. It'll be the same process either way. So we're going to try to stay strong to the hand or forearm and let ourselves use the right shoulder joint to slide the shoulder joint up towards the ear, keeping the elbow straight if you're on your hand, and let the right hip dip down towards the floor any amount. Now, if you have long arms like me, you have a long way to travel. And as the hip gets close to the floor, you're going to let that shoulder slide up towards the ear. And then we're going to push the hand into the floor, letting the shoulder slide away from the ear, push, 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 and push back up into your side plank. Maybe even letting the hips reach up to the ceiling. Push, push, push. Let's try it a couple more times. It's been a couple of weeks since I last did this, so mine feels a little shaky. This is not easy. It's about maintaining control. If you're really tight in your outer hips, that hip may not come all the way to the floor. You push that hand, push, 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 to lift back up. And as you lift up into that side plank, you're going to feel those right glutes and outer hips engaged. Maybe try one more time. And push through that hand. Once you find your side plank, we're going to unwind to center, finding a traditional plank. And you can go straight to downward facing dog or move through that chaturanga and cobra sequence first. We'll be taking that same sequence on the second side. So we'll be lifting the left leg away from the floor without pinching the canister, without crushing that tin can. Pausing there for a few breaths. Anchoring down to the right foot. And then we're going to hug the left thigh towards the left ribs. Shift forward and bring that foot down so we can set up for side angle pose. Extend right arm overhead. Keep the length. Bring the right hand down to the floor. Square everything up, bring left hand to the back of your head. Push that right hand down, push the left heel down, open up into your twist. Come back to center. We're making our way to that half moon pose. You'll be pushing through your left heel to stand up onto the left foot. Right hand can come to the hip. Reach out through both feet. What's happening with your canister? Did somebody pinch on the left side? Lift from the outer right hip. Maybe extend the right arm up. There's a subtle internal rotation of the right thigh, a subtle external rotation of the left. And then we're gonna rebend the left knee. We're gonna step the right foot all the way back to come into our reverse warrior. Windmilling hands down to the floor. We're gonna make our way to a side plank on the left. You can be on hand or forearm. We'll be practicing letting the left hip lower down to the floor. As you lower the hip, the left elbow stays straight if you're on your hand. In both variations, forearm and hand, we let the left shoulder glide towards the left earlobe, and let the left hip slowly come down towards the floor. Think about your canister in the transitions. To come back, we push, push, push through the left hand. Push that floor away with your left hand or your forearm. Coming back into your side plank. Try it a couple more times. Moving real slowly so we can let the components of the left shoulder do their job. Once you come back to your side plank, hold there. And we'll unwind back to center and come to downward facing dog, or if you're already there or not already there, bring your knees down and let's come to that rabbit pose one more time. Sit bones toward heels, chest or rib cage towards thighs. And then I want you to really hug your thighs towards your ribs, rounding into your back body. Pressing through your hands to come to a seated position. You can lean to your side and come to sit with your left shin in front of the right. So for the sake of time, we're gonna close out our practice here. And on Friday, revisit some of these same postures. And we'll continue this journey exploring variations of side planks and related actions. So left shin in front, right shin behind. You can stay just like this, or you can slide that left heel forward a little bit. It's not necessarily more or better, it's just different. And you can stay upright, or you can hinge forward. And coming back upright, if you're not already there, we'll switch sides. Right shin will be in front, and you can keep those shins stacked close to each other, or you can shift your right heel forward. You can stay upright or bow forward. Now, there are certain actions in our practice and in our daily lives during which the tin can must bend. It's pretty hard to take a seated forward bend without pinching the front of your tin can a little bit, right? And expanding the opposite side of the tin can. The important part is, can we maintain that smooth tin can when we come out of the shape? Can we maintain the actions of the smooth tin can when we're in a side angle pose, right? Stuff like that. So those are things that you can focus on as you move through your day to day, and you have to reach up onto the top shelf, to get a glass or change a light bulb or whatever you do there in your home. When you're reaching up, it's asymmetrical. What happens to the tin can? Does it get totally pinched, or can we maintain some of that integrity of that tin can and let the reach come from out our armpit, between the armpit and the shoulder blade? That's your serratus. So you can contemplate that for the next minute or so, or you can let go of all that anatomy and all that stuff and just let your body and mind quiet down a little bit. It's challenging for the mind to do, so as it gets busy, you can just invite it back to your breath in your body. Find a position that's comfortable for you. That can be seated or laying down. You can lay on your side or your back. And once you find that position that you can tolerate for the next minute or so, just allow the muscles of your face and jaw to soften. And you can come back to that breath. If you're lying down, you'll have the benefit of the floor beneath you as a boundary to work with. And if you're seated, you can think about that connection between your back body and the floor. Place a hand on your chest and breathe into the space deep beneath that hand, where your upper back connects with the body, or the floor, excuse me, or the imaginary floor. And moving your hand down to your upper belly, just beneath your sternum. Breathing into your back body beneath that hand. Placing your hand over your belly button. And moving that hand down just beneath your belly button to your lowest abdomen. Removing your hand to let it rest to your side or your thigh. And see if you can keep breathing into your low back. You're welcome to stay with your meditation as long as you like, but if it's time for you to close out your practice, you can start to broaden your awareness to your surroundings and the rest of your body. And if you're lying down, rebend your knees, making your way to a seated position. Once you find your seat, gently press your palms together and bring them to that heart center, the base of your sternum. Instead of breathing into the heels of your hands, can you breathe into the space behind them, the space between your shoulder blades, into the back of your ribs. Thank you for choosing the practice of yoga and for sharing your time with me today. Namaste.